Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm doing a video that I'm really excited about, and that is my 10 most impactful or most important moments in the first 8 books of the Dresden Files. I have made a couple of videos about the Dresden Files, about my thoughts on the series, how my thoughts have changed as I've read the series, and those are all spoiler free, but now I would really love to get into some spoilery content. I will reiterate that as of right now, I have only read the first 8 books, so I am going to be looking and reflecting on those 8 books and picking the 10 moments that I think really have had the biggest impact on Harry as a character, that have been big turning points in the series, and that I think are kind of clues to the greater world building or fit into the greater context of the story, because I very much feel that this has become an epic fantasy. It started off as this sort of hard-boiled mystery monster of the week. We have this mystery of the week that Harry Dresden needs to solve, and I really do think that it has evolved into an epic fantasy tale. I think that Jim Butcher has put in so much work to grow the world, to expand his own internal lore and his own world building. There is a lot of political tension. There's a lot of growth in the characters. And I think that now when I progress from, books 9 up to 17 and beyond, I think that I'm going to start to see some of that come together. And I want to be able to look back on this and reflect and think, I thought that those were really big moments, but it was actually this moment that was really important. So as someone who has only read up to 8, these are going to be speculative. So they are not going to be definitive. If you are watching and you disagree with my choices, maybe I just don't have the context. Maybe I don't understand that something is going to be important. And maybe we just disagree, which is also fine. But I would love to hear the moments that you think were really pivotal for the series, that provided some sort of turning point or provided a really impactful piece of characterization for Harry. I would love to know, as people who are fans of the series, what do you think are the most important moments so far? And if, like me, you are just kind of making your way through Dresden and you're about at the same place, what moments have really had an impact on you and where you think this story is going? I'm excited to get into them. Like I said, I welcome any disagreement or discussion, but please refrain from any spoilers beyond book 8, because I have not continued from there, and I am really falling in love with this series, so I would hate to have it spoiled for me. Alright, so on my list of top 10 most important moments in the Dresden series so far, we are starting in chronological order, and the first one is going to be when Dresden blows up Bianca's mansion, or blows up the Velvet Room, in grave peril. This is obviously a very heightened time for Dresden. There's a lot of emotion that's going on here. He's been entrapped in the Velvet Room. He has inadvertently put Susan in danger, or Susan has inadvertently put herself in danger, is probably the better way to put that. And Dresden, being Dresden, obviously feels an immense sense of responsibility for keeping her safe. And so at that moment, when Susan is taken, we see Dresden give in to those violent impulses that he has for the first time in the series. And I think that, this is important for a number of reasons, but I think first and foremost, this is where the series really starts to take a turn for the dark. We have in this scene, and then in the aftermath of this scene, when Harry has to grapple with the fact that there may have been human beings that perished alongside the vampires in the Velvet Room, he has to grapple with that fact about killing people. And he already, as we know throughout the beginning of the series, has the death of his mentor that plagues his conscience. Despite the fact that his mentor had tried to kill him, Harry takes the sanctity of human life very seriously, and this is a huge turning point from him. We see, from this fallout, we see a huge dip in Harry's mental state in the 4th book of the series, and obviously there are other contributing factors there, but I think that this is something that really leaves a mark on Harry's psyche. Outside of that, this is just a demonstration of Harry's power. We get self-deprecating Harry quite frequently during the series. He likes to minimize his own abilities, call himself like a wrecking ball or a bull with no finesse and just a lot of power. But it's easy to underestimate how much power that really is, especially early in the series. So this is a confirmation of just how strong Harry is. And of course, probably the most important part of this entire act is that it is the inciting incident that precipitates the war between the Red Court and the White Council. So we have seen Bianca maneuver Dresden into a position where he has no choice but to lash out, and that precipitates the war that will then provide the bulk of the tension and will complicate matters for at least the series as I have read it so far, up to book 8. The second moment that I think really has influenced the rest of the series, all of the books that have come after, is when Dresden meets Nicodemus and the Denarians in Death Masks. I, obviously only having reached up to book 8, can only speculate, but I believe that Nicodemus is going to be the closest thing we have to a big bad throughout this series. I think that he is going to be a primary antagonist. And despite this being our first introduction to him, he certainly made a huge impact. His plan to use the shroud to create the plague is just so twisted. We can see, and this is something that I really like in a villain, is having someone who has the foresight to make long-term plans, who is not just running off pure emotion. In Nicodemus, we see a villain who is going to be calculating, who is going to be patient, who is going to be smart, and I think that he is going to make quite the adversary for Harry. And then obviously we get him trying to tempt Harry as well, and I think this gives us some insight into how important Harry is in the grand scheme of interworld politics, how special he actually is, because again, as I said in the first moment, Harry does a lot of that self-deprecating humor. He is our viewpoint into this world, so we see him as he sees himself, and that can leave us with kind of a skewed perception of who he really is and what he's really like. And I think the fact that Nicodemus, someone who is thousands of years old, who has been plotting, who has been putting his plans into motion for such a long time, for him to show any interest in Harry beyond just as a gnat, the human equivalent of nothingness, is something significant. I think that it means something, that Nicodemus feels like Harry is worth trying to tempt over to his side. And for me, this was just the first villain that felt extremely significant. I really like Marcone. I enjoyed his appearances throughout the first couple of books, but he definitely felt like a secondary antagonist. I do have hopes that he will be given a bigger role as the series continues, but for me, Nicodemus was that first introduction to a villain who felt like the real big bad. And speaking of Marcone, we have the third moment that I felt was supremely important, and that is where we see Marcone and the Shroud in Death Masks. Marcone, like I said, has been coming in and out of this series. He's been making appearances, and I think is just a really enjoyable villain. He's got that charm that you can sometimes see in those sociopathic characters, where they reel you in and you really enjoy seeing them on the page. Obviously, Marcone is not a nice person, but I do find reading about him enjoyable, and I do hope that he continues to show up and maybe gain a bigger role throughout the series. But I think the scene at the end of Death Masks, where we see Marcone take the shroud to this hospital and try to revive this as of yet unidentified young woman, I think that really lends him an element of humanity that brings his character to life. I think that it adds more depth to his character, and this is one of the reasons why I think we're going to see more of Marcone as the series continues, and why I expect him to play a bigger role, because I don't think that Jim Butcher would go through the process of giving him that element of humanity if he wasn't intended to play a greater role in the series. I think that there had, up until this point, been a layer of depth and complexity that had been lacking in the secondary characters, and this is where we first start to see that come to light. I think that the element of mystery is also important, just having that mystery to be unfurled. We get this young woman at the end of Death Masks, and then we move away from that information. And again, like I said, I don't think that this is just a random piece of information from Jim Butcher. I think that that is something that is going to come into play in future books, and I, for one, am really excited about that. But I think in general, this is less about Marcone himself. The reason that I think that this is such an important moment is because it really shows us how Jim Butcher is starting to make those secondary characters feel more complex. I think that this is definitely a turning point for the series in that Harry is not the only character who's getting development. We get a lot of important secondary characters in Death Masks, and I think that having that added layer of complexity to the villains and to some of the other side characters means great things for the Dresden Files in general. The next moment, so number 4 on the list, is one of my favorite moments of the series so far, and that is the Thomas reveal and soul gaze. I had a lot of mixed opinions going into book 6. A lot of people had told me that it was one you just had to get through in order to get to book 7, but I loved book 6 only because it was so important for Harry, that connection between Harry and Thomas. So Harry finding out that Thomas is his brother and then receiving that soul gaze message from his mom, I think is one of the most impactful moments for Harry as a main character in the entire series so far. Thomas has been a character that I have really enjoyed since his first appearance in Grave Peril, and he is a secondary character that I am so happy that we are going to be getting more of. I like his charm. I enjoy the vampires in general in this series. I like the White Court, and I'm interested in finding out more about them, but I think that Thomas is just such a phenomenal character, and he's such a good sibling for Harry. The type of personality that he has seems like an older brother type of personality, and I think that that is going to lead to a lot of really great character moments. But it's just so important to the series and so important to Harry, because part of what has been such a big struggle for him is that he doesn't have any family. His parents are gone. His mentor, the person who was supposed to care for him, betrayed him, and he has really struggled with that sense of isolation. And I think that's where we get a lot of the self-deprecating humor. I think that Harry really does have some complicated feelings about himself, and how could he not when he grew up alone, when he grew up unsupported? And I think that having this character, having this relationship in his life is going to mean great things for Harry in general. I think it's also important for us as the readers of the story to have this familial character who can give us a perspective on Harry that we're lacking. This is going to be someone who is going to love Harry unconditionally, who will probably get on his nerves and will probably hate him at moments if, he's anything like every other sibling, but he will also be able to give us a lens onto Harry that we have been missing so far, because he is going to be someone who loves him just because. There's going to be no underlying reasons. There's going to be no, secondary gain. It's just, you're my family. You're my brother. I need to be there for you. And I am so looking forward to more Harry and Thomas banter. Unfortunately, after that tender-hearted, impactful moment, the next moment that I think really is important for the development of the series as a whole is Harry discovering Ebenezer's betrayal, or the secrets that he has kept from him. So this also happens in Blood Rights, and this is where Ebenezer admits to Harry that he was acting as Black Staff of the White Council. And this is important for a couple of different reasons. So it tells us that there is such a thing as the Black Staff. So we've been led to believe that the council has these very strict rules with regards to violent magic and who can use it. And then we go to find out that they have created their own exception to that rule, which I think speaks a little bit to the hypocrisy of the council at large. And I think Harry has struggled so much. He has made mistakes and has not been forgiven for those mistakes. And to see that not only did the White Council permit the use of violent magic, but it was Harry's mentor, the man who taught him how to be gentle, how violence is not an acceptable answer, who kept him alive. That is just, must have been such a wound to Harry, and I think that it is a major moment because it really impacts the trust between the two of them, and it, I think, is going to inform a lot of Harry's choices moving forward. It also lends that element of suspicion towards the White Council. Like, if this is a secret that has been kept and I was so close to this person, what other kinds of secrets are the White Council hiding? And I think that's going to be an important point moving forward, because the fragility of the White Council and the difficulties that they are facing, that is certainly one of the important political situations that drives the underlying mystery throughout the Dresden series. Beyond that, we also find out that Ebenezer was Harry's mother's mentor, and that he feels like he drove her away through being overly strict. And then and Harry has to learn that that is one of the reasons that Ebenezer stood up for him. So I think that this is probably a lot of it's inciting a lot of mixed feelings. So we have Harry having had no information about his mom when he grew up alongside someone who could have provided him with memories, who could have provided him with information about her personality and how much she must have cared about him. And he didn't have access to any of that. Ebenezer kept that from him. But then also, Ebenezer was the only person to stand up for Harry, to take his side with the White Council. He's the reason that Harry wasn't executed. And I imagine that it must be difficult for Harry to realize that that wasn't because of anything that Ebenezer saw in him. It was because Ebenezer looked at him and saw his mother. So I think that that would probably add to those feelings of inadequacy, that struggle with his own self-esteem, and really fractured that trust. I think that that was really a really difficult moment for Harry, and it opens up lots of different questions about the White Council at large, and I think that's what makes it such an important moment for this first half of the series. Number 6, so this was a difficult one to pinpoint because I think I could have picked a couple of different moments, but the moment that I have decided to go with is the Lashiel reveal in Deadbeat. Now, I think that equally important could have been Harry just picking up the coin that led to him being imprinted with Lashiel's sigil, or it could have been the moment where he finally decides to accept help from Lash, and he is, giving in that small way, and that shows a bit of a change from his steadfast ideals. He has been unaccepting of any help up until that point, and then he finally gives in. And I think that those are both really important moments, but I think that the Lashiel reveal is probably the best moment of those three, because at least for me, it's something that I didn't see coming. When Dresden meets Sheila, I think it's easy to assume that not everything is as it seems. I did wonder, is she a plant? Is this doesn't seem like it's going to be the foundation of a strong and consistent relationship for Harry. But even the little clues like Billy the werewolf feeling a little bit uncomfortable around him, or the shopkeeper noticing that there's something off, I did not pick up on the fact that Harry was talking to someone who wasn't there until the actual reveal took place. And I think that was really well done, and it reflects that inner turmoil. So we have Harry slowly being infiltrated, essentially. This is like a psychic or a soul parasite, something that has latched onto him and is trying to shift his perspective to bring him over to the dark side. But I thought it was such a cool reveal. It also shows that Harry, when he finally started to open himself up to the possibility of intimacy, he was tricked once again. And I think that really is a good metaphor. It's a good representation, I guess is a better way to say that, a good representation of that dark temptation. Lashiel is not there to be his friend. She is there to tempt him. And just the entire way that plays out, playing on Harry's loneliness and his insecurity, giving him a friend, giving him comfort, that's going to be the way to make him open up. And I thought it was the perfect introduction to a fallen angel. Number 7 is probably my favorite individual moment of the Dresden Files so far, and that is Zombie Sue or Tyrannosaurus Bob. This was just such a fun moment. This is the moment where I was reading Dresden. I was like, this is amazing. I am now sold on this series. This is something that I will be reading as quickly as possible, and I think it's important for a couple of different reasons. Like, it's just an amazing scene. You cannot read that and think that it's not a cool scene, and I think that that's important. At least for me, these started off as kind of, a decent palate cleanser to put on the TBR to break things up that I was reading. But when I read the Tyrannosaurus Bob scene, there was no looking back. This is just so much fun. I think it epitomizes what Dresden Files is all about. You've got the cool magic, you've got the deeper themes, you've got the just kick-ass action scene. This, for me, it makes this list for that reason alone. But there are also some really important concepts that are revolving around this scene. So we have Harry slowly starting to recognize that black magic may not be unilaterally evil. Just like the magic of his will or the magic of fire it depends on who is wielding it. We also get the idea that maybe necromancy is not absolute evil. Harry is not animating a human corpse. He is not using this magic to hurt anybody. And actually, the use of this spell ends up saving a lot of people and really helping Harry at the end of the day. And I think that that's an important concept. As I continue further into this series, we do get those shades of gray. I think with a governing body like the White Council, it's very easy to see things in black and white because they are very black and white. They do not invite a lot of shades of gray. And that's what makes some of these villains really interesting as well, is you get villains like the fallen angels who tell Harry, we're like you, we just wanted to exercise our free will. And there's a lot to think about. So I think that opening himself up to the possibility that all magic can be used for good and all magic can be misused is an important lesson for Harry. And what better representation than a zombie Sue, for sure. And then also, I think a really important moment in Deadbeat in general is just finding out more about Bob's backstory. Tyrannosaurus Bob was excellent. I also struggled with whether I should include this or include us getting a glimpse at Bob as he used to be when he worked for Kemmler, and that was a terrifying sight. But I think it's important to see that I think Bob really wanted Harry to lock that part of himself away. I think that he did not like that part of himself, and despite his complaints, I think that he enjoys his life with Harry and being able to help him in the ways that he can. So that was another important part of this scene, and something that I think is going to be an important plot point moving forward. I don't know why Jim Butcher would remind us of Bob's capacity for evil and some of the past things that he has done if it was not going to be brought up again at some point in the future of the series. Number 8 is a very subtle and short scene that I think has huge impact on the series at large. This is when Harry is given a tip by the gatekeeper in Proven Guilty. So the gatekeeper specifically tells Harry that there has been some black magic being used in Chicago and asks him personally to investigate it. And this is an extremely significant plot point because it really shows us, for the first time, it gives us concrete proof outside of Harry's speculations that there is division at the highest levels of the White Council. We have the gatekeeper, who is this figure who's still shrouded in mystery, but we know that he is one of the strongest members of the council. He holds a lot of influence, and for him to communicate directly with Harry not only shows us that he believes that there is this division within the White Council, but also that he believes that Harry is someone who is trustworthy. One of the most important, one of the most powerful members of the White Council believes in Harry and his trustworthiness. So I think that is a really important moment. It doesn't lead to a significant plot point. We haven't come back to see what else the gatekeeper is doing yet, at least so as far as I have read in the story. But just that quiet moment of him confiding in Harry, giving Harry that heads up, I think that speaks volumes about the political structure of the White Council and the kinds of dangers that they are dealing with right now. Moment number 9 is also a quiet moment, and I think that this is important because it reminds us of the limitations of that first person narrative. It reminds us that we are getting Harry's perspective on himself. And that is the moment when Michael tells Harry that he saw him pick up the coin, that he saw him save his son, and that he knows that Harry has been struggling with this form of the fallen angel. So this happens in Proven Guilty, and throughout that book, we get Harry grappling with the fact that he's going to have to tell Michael, this person that Harry looks on as a paragon of virtue. He thinks he's one of the best people in his life. Michael's good opinion means a lot to Harry because he thinks that Michael is genuinely a good person, and he believes that he can never live up to that same standard. So he grapples with how he's going to tell Michael, but knows that he is going to have to. And when he finally finds out that Michael knew all along, that Michael still allowed him around his family, that Michael still wanted to help him, he trusted him, he wanted to be his friend, I think that that is such an important moment. Harry's friends care about him. Like, Michael Carpenter is literally a gift from God. He is a gift from God to the world. He is a white knight. He is so good. He is that lawful good character that we all love and know that we could never live up to. He believes in Harry. He trusts him. And I think that seeing him pay back that trust, seeing him show Harry how much he means to him, I think that's a really important moment for the series. And it's important because we need that reminder sometimes. We get to hear about all of Harry's flaws because he's only too happy to talk about them. He's only too happy to point out the times that he has failed or the things that he feels that he has done wrong. But through his friends, and especially through this moment with Michael, we get to see how good Harry actually is, and that's an important reminder. And then we have the final moment, one of the most important moments in the series so far, and that is, of course, at the end of Proven Guilty when Harry takes on Molly Carpenter as his apprentice. I think this is a perfect mirror of Harry's own adolescence. It allows Harry to pay back some of the kindness that was given to him when he was allowed a second chance. And I think it really ties in well with that idea and those themes that are starting to become more prevalent in the Dresden Files of that idea of magic not being good or evil and the importance of intent. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how Harry changes as he starts to mentor Molly. I think that it's going to be really important to lots of future events, but is also really going to help Harry develop some patience and develop some capacity for self-reflection. I think it's really difficult to be hard on yourself and believe that everything that you're doing is wrong if you're trying to teach another person. So I hope that this will help open up some of that self-reflection for Harry and help him to recognize some of his strengths. I think that this can only make him a stronger person, but of course it's going to give him someone else to care about and someone else to fear for. All right, everybody, that is my 10 most important moments from Dresden Files 1 to 8. I would love to hear your opinions, which ones you think belong on the list, which ones you think have absolutely no place being there. I would love to know. Again, please keep it spoiler-free for the remainder of the series, but I would love any and all discussion that comes up from this. I hope that you enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to make and think about and put together. It was very difficult to leave some moments off the list. 10 seems like a lot when you're only dealing with 8 books, but there's a lot that Jim Butcher has managed to pack into these. I would love to do more of these as I continue through with the Dresden Files and hope that I can spend some time getting to know the characters and maybe putting up some videos about them as well. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you with another video soon. Bye!